Shalom, shalom, damn it, my friends, my friends. Oh, I have such wonderful news for you on this episode of Dave's Gone By, where Dave has been kind enough to allow me to conduct an interview, even after all the many, many delightful interviews that I have ruined in the past few years. But this, he figured, no one would be more apt, more appropriate to do this particular conversation than yours truly, Rabbi Sol Solomon of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And that is because I have an author, one of my all-time favorite authors, besides God, who wrote the Torah. But after him, we're talking with Neal Karlen, the author of The Story of Yiddish, How a Mishmash of Languages Saved the Jews, published by William Morrow Books. But we don't have him tomorrow. We have him right now on the radio, on the telephone. Hello, Neal Karlen. Shalom.
Rebbe, shalom. I must say you're a Meshuggah, and I do not go to your temple because, as you know, every Jew has to belong to two synagogues, one they go to, and one they wouldn't be caught dead in.
Right, so couldn't mine be the one you're going to be caught dead in?
You know, we hear rumors, you know, about you and some members in the choir, and I don't want to go any further, you know, but let's just say you might want to change the subject.
As long as you pay the membership dues, you don't have to. In fact, we would prefer you wouldn't. If you pay the dues, that's good enough for us.
Well, you know,
we'll save you a chair.
I hear the Chassids, they don't have money. They schnorr it from, as if you remember Groucho Marx singing, "Did someone call me Schnorr?"
I'll never forget it.
You know, from my temple, Temple Beth Yehupitzville, which is across the block from yours, but
Temple
you know how it goes. Two
Jews,
Jews, three opinions. I can't cross the street.
Isn't that under a hardware store? I saw that. I noticed that. Anyway, let's talk about your book. Let me do the jokes. You'll talk about the book. All right, here we go. The Story of Yiddish. First of all, why did you want? Didn't Leo Rostin cover this like 30 years ago? What are you adding to the picture?
Well, Leo Rostin was I think he was a great guy, but his was a lexicon, a dictionary, here's the difference between putz and yuts. And this is a narrative story of how this
is how putz became yuts eventually.
Yes, and it was always looked down upon, even by the Jews. It started as, you know, there's that book, Born to Kvetch, and
I know,
that's what Yiddish
live
is.
that.
What's that?
I am born to kvetch. I live that book.
But I think he was dead wrong, because I don't think Jews were born to whine. I think the right song was Born to Run, that Yiddish was based on, you know, the Springsteen thing, because it was the language of exile. And it's just the most beautiful, sad, funny language on earth. It's a language of magic and loss, not of kvetching, because if all Jews did was whine over the centuries, they would have never made it. And what's interesting is how Yiddish has gone into the vernacular. The biggest commercial of the year was for Gatorade with Harvey Keitel saying Schmendrick on the TV show Stacked.
Oh, I missed that.
Jenny McCarthy in an episode says to Pamela Anderson, "We're all mishpacha," which is family. Don't be a Meshuggah, which is you know, crazy. But I live in Minneapolis where there are no Jews, and it's hysterical to see people who talk like Fargo. Oh yeah, there, don't you know? Going, oi, I gotta schlep this, don't you know? I mean, it's just gone into the, you know, right in there. Yuts, putz, schmutz. It's the SH words are good. They're a little filthy, but
oh yeah, that's why I like them.
Yeah, but you can't say them on the pulpit.
But where did it come from? Did it come from German, or did it come from English, or Latvian? What was it?
It came from it's literally made up of 25 languages. Every place the Jews got kicked out, they picked up a few words, and they traded a few words. So they now count 25 languages in it, not counting American Western, where a stick-up is, in Yiddish you say, hold up the hands, please. You know? So it's a beautiful language. It was put down for so many years because Holy Hebrew, the Torah dictated by God to Moses, was always the holy language, where Yiddish was for the ignorant, the barnyard rabble, the yentas gossiping, and it was tried to be stamped out even by the state of Israel because it was the ghetto language. So it's the worst part. So Leo Roston, it was very controversial.
He wrote a book called The Joys of Yiddish, as opposed to the Goys of Yiddish, who are like Pamela Anderson now.
Now, goy, I was surprised, is not a slur, but the word shiksa is a slur. Another Rebbe here, Rabbi Manis Friedman, who actually turned Bob Dylan, this is true, back into a Jew. He's the only Hasidic rabbi to be in Rolling Stone. This is true. He said, goyim just means world, everything out there. But shiksa, he said, is a terrible slur which you should never use on anybody. And I said, well, what does it mean? And he said, it's so horrible, I can't even tell you.
Oh. So
it's a terrible word, but I can't tell you why.
Well, what about shagets?
Shagets is not so bad. I don't know how horrible that translates either, but, it's a matriarchy here. So if your son marries a non-Jewish woman, caught myself there,
right?
Your grandchildren will not be Jewish. But if your daughter marries a shagets, a non-Jewish male, your grandchildren will still be Jewish. So it's I'll use the word here. The shiksa goddess is the nightmare of every Jewish mother.
That's when the shiksa hits the fan, is what
the shiksa hits the fan. And,
but you were saying
if you've ever had the shiksa at your house and 12 Jews looking at them, but it's a universal.
I wish I had some shiksas at my house. Let me tell you. But no, what about Leo Roston again? We're going to say something about him and what he was working on.
I think he did a terrific service because, Jews wanted to get away from Yiddish. It was an embarrassment. I remember my grandparents, who I never understood, just seemed so old world, and this sort of brought it back. Whenever I have non-Jewish friends who are like working in Hollywood, I send it to them so they'll understand. And, there is the phrase in Hollywood that's been around for 50 years, think Yiddish, cast British.
Damn it.
And it's true. It's true. And...
But the thing about why Yiddish is not necessarily a dying language like Latin or Swedish is that the Orthodox at some point picked it up. What happened with that? All the young Orthodox, the Chassids that we were talking about, they're speaking Yiddish. Where did that come from?
Well, you know what it is? It's the Chassids wanted to stay as far away from possible from all the modern temptations, even be it in the 1880s. You're not supposed to watch television. You're not supposed to watch movies. So it's a way to sort of separate themselves even further from society, which is actually how Yiddish started during the First Crusades. The Crusaders were going around, practicing their chops, literally, on Jews. So the language started morphing so Jews could get away and have their own way of talking. Wow. It's sort of how African Americans invented jive, which is now known as...
Or not Ebonics, but I know the
African American English vernacular.
That's what my homies talk like.
Yeah, well, have you heard the thing, there was that song by the rap group, Oh, I'm So Horny, and then two live Jews recorded the song, Oi, It's So Humid. So it's a universal language, and I get such a thrill. Leo Roston wrote this thing about how with Jews...
Don't make me pop a cap in your tuchus. That's the...
Yiddish has the filthiest phrases. People go, oh, it's a filthy language, but it's not. It's actually a very shy language, so they had to invent these incredible metaphors for... Can I use examples that may not be PG? The phrase for someone has a sexual transmitted disease is hatten die Häusen a Yarid, which means he's got a carnival in his pants, which is a much better,
I never heard that. That's wonderful.
If someone's good in bed, you say, she really knows how to dance the mattress polka, because there are no words in the actual language it's a very shy language, so... But it's funny because they've got
my dear wife Miriam Libby barely does a two-step. Let me tell you. Well, what can
roll out the barrel as a new meaning, and but it's.
What are some other phrases? Some kooky, funny, great Jewish curses or phrases or descriptions?
It's. I'm thinking there's so many. My favorite. It's also heavily philosophical. My favorite is. It sounds German, but it's not. There's always a weird word that no German can understand. But this is philosophical. Mensch tracht, God lacht. Man plans, God laughs. which I think we could always...
My parents have been using that phrase anytime, you plan things, you want to go away for something, and then a relative dies.
Yes.
That's it. Man makes plans, God goes, pooh.
One of my favorite things is the Yiddish speakers in Russia, the peasants like my family, they had a very close relationship with God. It wasn't like, if you saw Fiddler on the Roof,
Who hasn't seen Fiddler on the Roof?
It was a toe tapper. But, Zero Mostel talking to God and going, hey, couldn't you pick someone else to be chosen for a while? And there's the Yiddish phrase, if God lived on earth, all his windows would be broken.
I love that. That's beautiful.
It's sort of like he's an underachiever. In Yiddish, he's an underachieving, good... it's like we could use a miracle now. What have you done for us lately?
Pretty much all they did for us lately was give us 30 Rock.
Yeah.
That's about all I can think of in the past 10 years.
But finally, it's, and it's always been put down as, this is a dialect, it's not really, and Max Weinreich, the big scholar, he said, a dialect is a language without an army or a navy, which is what Jews didn't have until Israel, and they, of course, wanted to, repress this.
And what is Yiddish treated now like in Israel? Is it really accepted? Is it? You won't see signs. You won't see road signs going 2 miles.
No, they loathe it. They hate it because to them it symbolizes, World War II. The Jews supposedly walking into the gas chambers. So a lot of these Eastern European Jews who came to Israel at the beginning, they changed their name from, Isaac to, David Ben-Gurion, strong biblical names, because this was going to be the new strong Jews, not the weenie Jews of the ghettos who could just be slaughtered. And so it's been put down. What Hitler didn't accomplish, assimilation in America, you didn't want to tell like your grandparents, and Israel almost took care of. It's quite a group of,
Have you ever been to Israel?
Yes, I have, and no one understands Yiddish. I teach college sometimes, and there's a Hebrew teacher. A teacher who is from Israel. He doesn't understand a word of Yiddish. And what's cool about Yiddish is it kind of stopped after a while. So there's no words for tanks, guns, ammunition. It's about hope, and that's nice to have a language that doesn't have atomic bomb in it.
Right. Does it have prostate in it?
Oh, listen. Oy. Oy.
Just making sure. That's a word I use a lot.
Fine wine, great books, priceless antiques. All that's missing is something to listen to. But of course, episodes of Dave's Gone By, the music, the comedy, the perceptive talk, entire shows preserved on compact disc. Any episode you choose, just $11, shipping included. No home is complete without Dave's Gone By on CD. So visit davesgoneby.org because you're worth it.
This is Neal Karlen, author of the new The Story of Yiddish, How a Mishmash of Languages Saved the Jews. And I'm here on Dave's Gone By. Is a mensch. He is a mensch, as is all of WGBB.
We're talking, by the way, with Neal Karlen, author of The Story of Yiddish, How a Mishmash of Languages Saved the Jews. We just have a couple of minutes left with the wonderful Mr. Karlen. So this is not your first and only book. In fact, you wrote a book called Shanda, which is a Yiddish phrase in itself.
Yes, my mother never forgave me because on the cover, I didn't put this. I was the Shanda. It was called The Making and Breaking of a Self-Loathing Jew, and they had the back of a guy's head wearing a yarmulke with a pig on it. And my mother made Oliver Shalom. That almost, I still think I might have done her in. But this, and I've also done, I like subcultures. When I was at Rolling Stone, I wrote a book about the music industry. I followed Bill Murray's minor league baseball team around. I did other rock and roll books, and suddenly I said, you know what, maybe I should write about my own people. So I was about to become a rabbi, and instead, at the last second, I became a Rolling Stone writer, and it's a long story, which I'm sure you don't have time for.
Well, the brief version, because, you called yourself a self-hating Jew. Are you still? How did you get over that? I'm a Jew who hates everybody else, and I tolerate myself. How do you hold up with that?
Yeah, I was actually more self-loathing than a self-loathing Jew. It just suddenly became, I'd never eaten bacon before I was 22. I ate it, and suddenly I was a bacon slut. I'd never gone out with a non-Jewish woman until I was 22. Suddenly, I was going out with people in the Nationalist Socialist Party. I was married and divorced from... This is true.
Wait a minute. No, that's not true. You were not dating a Nazi.
This is true. People talk this way in the Midwest. I got married... I was briefly to an Icelandic, and at the wedding, 10 minutes after we were married, her grandfather said to my father, who was telling a story, you should have Jewed them down. These phrases still exist here.
Oh,
I'm not kidding. But out here, think of Jews from Minnesota, Bob Dylan, the Coen brothers. No one knows what we're doing here, but we're here. Thomas L. Friedman of the Times. Whoa. They're all from...
well, maybe if we have to give Israel back to the Arabs, and not back to them, but to them, at least we can all move to Minnesota.
I think
the winters aren't nice, but,
Yeah, we had 7 inches of snow 3 days ago. I had to go to I went to the ball game and, weeping for you stealing Johann Santana, and there were 7 inches of snow outside.
Well, we exaggerate. There was probably 4 inches, and you
look
know
it
how
up.
Jewish man...
Casey Stengel said, you can look it up.
Well, everybody, look up The Story of Yiddish, How a Mishmash of Languages Saved the Jews, published by William Morrow Books and by the delightful Neal Karlen. Neal, would you come back again and give us some more Yiddish things?
I would love to. And the book isn't just jokes. It's a story, but there's a sense of humor and irony. So Moses is important as Sandy Koufax.
Oh, he is in my book. Well, maybe Hank Greenberg.
Well, now
we'll discuss.
I mean, this is the pantheon.
Neal Karlen, thank you so much for being with me in this Shalom Dammit neighborhood.
You're a mensch. I always said it. No matter what anybody said about you, I always defended you.
Oh, well, they were true, but I have my good points.